Good morning and welcome to Mental Health Matters with me, Dr Audrey Tang. This is the show where we tackle all things workplace wellbeing. Today's topic is an unusual one. It's one that has slowly got a little bit more traction, and it's a really important one, and I hope more discussion is forthcoming. We have got sex therapist Madina Demirbas to join us today, but we're not going to be talking about sex. We're going to be talking about something called the sandwich generation. The sandwich generation is when you're an adult and you are sandwiched in between caring for your own children as well as aging parents. And there are a number of issues, concerns, and experiences that we don't often talk about, but actually we need to, because they are going to contribute to us feeling burnt out and unable to do either of those caring roles. So let's head over to the main studio. Welcome to Mental Health Matters Office Hours, Madina. Always great to have you here.
Always great to be back. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. And whilst we know you're a sex therapist and your show, please watch Mental Health Matters After Hours, because Madina is just so enlightening about sex and all the things that go around it. But today we are actually looking at something which can become a bit of a barrier to our sexual well-being, and this is being part of the sandwich generation. Now, as I explained in the introduction, the sandwich generation is when you've got the adult who is caring usually for a young child and then also caring for an elderly parent, so you're kind of stuck in the middle there. Can you explain to our viewers how that can impact our well-being in general?
I wish I couldn't. I wish I didn't have to know. I mean, I wish I didn't have to explain it from a personal point of view, because this topic is very personal to me. Right. I found myself to be a sandwich carer, which I'll get to shortly. But so it was basically January morning this year that I was just scrolling down and seeing what are the news in psychology and research and so on. And the LC wrote an interesting article about the sandwich carers and how much they are more likely to experience physical and mental health problems. Yes. It's even so they compared over the 10 years, they compared 2,000 sandwich carers with 2,000 non-sandwich carers. And so what was the dynamic through these years? And it turned out that the sandwich carers were 31% of them experienced the symptoms of depression and anxiety, whereas the general population would have it as 24.
So that is quite a big,
There's a big gap, especially when it reaches the level of 20 hours per week. Then we see it deteriorate exponentially. And I said, okay, what an interesting information. You know, it's good to discuss it with my colleagues. And it didn't resonate with me back then that I am the sandwich carer. Oh, wow. It's so interesting, because when you're in it, you can't see it, you can't identify. Then 1 week later, I find myself in the emergency room in the hospital, having a very difficult condition. It was resolved, but that was something I've never had before, and that brought me to the awareness that I'm struggling, mentally, psychologically, feeling inadequate. And then I was like, where does it come from? I always knew I'm a mother. I always knew that I'm a daughter of aging parents, but it never came together in one picture. I never realized that I lived these two realities. And my parents live in my home country, which in my case makes it harder. I don't know.
Yes,
if it's always the case for others, you know, they can just rent, not necessarily seeing your parents aging. But in my case, it made it much harder to organize things, to call this person, that person, make sure that it's fine. My parents would refuse to take medication. Then over the phone, I'm trying to convince them that it's necessary, that the doctors are not plotting anything against you, you know. And at the same time, I have small children who are 5 and 9, 2 boys. They're still pretty small. Yeah. And then it hit me. I am the sandwich carer who is part of the statistics, you know. In the UK, it's estimated 1.2 million people are sandwich carers.
That's
it's a big number.
It's a huge number, and I think you've said on a previous show where we are becoming, in a way, not more isolated, but our families are smaller. We're no longer within this community kind of situation, which means that we have to rely on each other or ourselves in this quite small nucleus rather than being able to reach out. And I think that's a problem. And of
Definitely.
course, while this show isn't focused on sex specifically, sex, of course, is an intimacy is a huge part of well-being. But when you're feeling so emotionally drained because you've got demands coming from both sides, you don't want to do anything at all.
No.
And how do you cut yourself some slack?
The first thing is that when you realize that your resources are actually limited, it's again, coming from these expectations of the society, of your family, depending on the family dynamic, if in your family you've always actually been the carer for your parents, very often the roles have sometimes, sadly, but the roles switch very early, that the children become the parents of their parents, even if they're not aging or sick. So recognizing that really and communicating that to your partner as well, it could be a big breakthrough. But also really having compassion for yourself. I mean, we barely talk about self-compassion. We talk about reaching goals, about smashing it, about doing it, especially as an immigrant. Yes. You are sort of expected. They're calling you from my country, and they're like, "Okay, so what? What's your next accomplishment?" kind of thing. Yeah. So do you like it? Yeah, you love it. Have you bought a house and so on? Like this is not just for the immigrants, but I'm afraid it's for general population. We're much more interested in like just going after things rather than checking on ourselves.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's very true.
A lot of pressure. So people in your situation, and as you've been talking, I've realised that my sister is also a sandwich carer, which I hadn't really thought of before. A lot of people do try and struggle on their own, and even if they have got siblings, who they might not be able to help. So how should carers ask for help if they do need it?
I mean, it starts. A good place to start is to understand that your resources are getting low and finished. You're very close to burnout.
You have to see it, don't you?
You usually, we will talk about the signs of burnout a bit later. The physical health symptoms that are alarming, that you normally wouldn't have, obviously. But another thing, asking for help part is trying to understand what your family dynamics is in general, what your family system is. Like I said, if you were actually the kid who was taking care of parents a long time before they started aging, or what is, sometimes just even drawing it would bring you a different perspective. So, excuse me, why is it me, and why do I have to... because when you're in the system, it looks perfectly normal. Yes, of course. That's my job, that's my duty, especially if you come from Eastern culture. However, just drawing it, talking to a specialist, maybe just one session with a family specialist would help you to see the whole structure of the family that is toxic. And then you can set your boundaries and say, this is how much I can do in this situation. That's really sad. It's devastating, but I still have small children. I have my career, and we'll talk about it later as well. How much it impacts the career and of the sandwich carers.
Yeah. That's a really good advice to talk to someone about it. And what if you can't get any respite from the situation? Are there groups or charities that may be able to help?
Yeah, there are a few in the UK. There's Age UK. There are carers, Young Carers Trust, I believe. Yeah. They help. They have hotlines, and in some places, I don't remember. In some cities, they would have the actual meetings.
Yes,
of the people.
Right. Okay.
No, I think they do. They have them. I know, for somebody who's sick, so somebody who's looking after someone with cancer or with, but it's linked more to the illness rather than the actual carer side of it. But yes, no, there are definitely groups. This is a very interesting conversation. Madina, you're staying with us, and we'll be back just after this.
How to process your emotions in a nutshell. First of all, when something gets triggered in you, when you feel those uncomfortable emotions, don't suppress it. Stay with them. How to stay with those emotions? They might be painful, they might be uncomfortable, but how about you be curious? Curious about your emotions, curious about your sensations, feelings and thoughts. You try to name it, so you can say, I feel sad. You can do it aloud or in your mind, just name it. Or guess, however you feel, just say, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I feel this or that. This person triggered me and this is how I feel. It's okay to feel the way you feel, totally okay. The most important thing is that you name it and you recognize that this emotion is there. Then you feel it. You allow yourself to feel that emotion. You can even intensify it in your body. And then locate it. So locate it wherever it is. Is it in your stomach? Is it in your heart? Is it in your mind? Make sure that you name it, feel it and locate it, and then kind of acknowledge it and notice it. Be gentle with it, be curious, and then the emotion will pass, because emotions, funny enough, last only 90 seconds. After that is your thoughts that keep them going. So how about today you're going to be curious about emotions when you get triggered. You feel those emotions, locate it, make them going, because they will disappear eventually. Simply be with your emotions, do not distract yourself.
We are talking to Madina about the sandwich generation. Looking after elderly parents, when does it come to a point where we have to think about potential alternative arrangements?
You see, you're saying about parents, and what about the children? You know, it has to be
That's
in the
true.
context,
Yes.
the context of children as well, and
Yes.
how much actually do you have the capacity?
Yes.
Well, and how old your children are. You see, because earlier, now that the women give birth later in their lives, so the children are still small while the parents are aging. Now,
That's a really good point.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Before, by the time the parents would age, the children would already be more or less growing up, and then you would have more capacity to take care of your parents. So if you, it's a very, very individual question. It depends on, you know, what the situation with the children is at your workplace, how much support you have at your workplace, and so on. So how much actually do you know, how much realistically you can help in this situation.
That's true, especially with something like dementia or Alzheimer's. You may not have the specialist knowledge.
Exactly.
And why should you? You know, so yeah.
Especially if it's new, if it's just beginning. So if you think that actually you might need alternative arrangements, and now we're talking about parents specifically, it's a very, very hard conversation. How do you begin to have that with your parents and even siblings?
It's a good, you know, it's good question, and it also presupposes that you're all alone by yourself and you are the only one who should start it. And if that's how it feels, then you might want to bring other people in. Really, you don't have to do it alone. You can do it with your friends, with other siblings. But once you really understand this is as much as I can do in this situation, I wish I could do more, but if I do, then I will go down the road with them, you know, and this is not what I necessarily want.
And sometimes it's just acknowledging that you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, acknowledging, you know, because usually by the time we acknowledge it's late for us, or, you know, we've been programmed in this book as well. When Buddy says, no, we're programmed to do until the last breath. You know, and then, and even then, some people would,
even
then they would continue taking care because it's so much. It's so much under our skin, especially for women, to just take care all the time of anybody possible.
Yeah, no, that's true. And how might you explain to children if their grandparents aren't behaving in the normal way, if they've got dementia, for example? How can you explain to the child that, you know, your grandma isn't really herself at the moment? She might say things that she doesn't really mean.
It depends which age of
True.
children, which condition of your parents. You might even want, you know, to find a moment when the parent is aware of what's happening, and maybe you can have this conversation together. but there's one thing you really don't want to do is to pretend like everything is okay.
Yes.
Okay.
To rug it under the carpet and to think that children will not understand or they will not notice. You know, children are the best detectors of elephants in the room.
Yes, they are. Yes.
And it actually traumatizes them much more when things are unspoken, when these difficult, emotionally charged situations are not spoken. Not to them as counselors, you know, like I want to tell you all the difficulties of caring, but in a sense of mommy's really worried and mommy's really tired because this is what happens when people, you know, age. Not to everybody, but this is the case. And recently I read a book by David Williams. It's called Gangsta Grandma. My son read it, and it's exactly about this, you know, it's a good fiction of a grandson getting connected to his grandma and how she confuses things, and then he helps, and then they do the robbery together and so on. It's a really beautiful fiction. And you know, something like that, like a book could help, because they're in because in this book, my son is 9 years old, so he has this understanding of aging, and this book as well sort of brings compassion to the elder people and saying that they're not necessarily as, they weren't always like that. It's hard to imagine, but they were young, and you know, they were children as well, and this is, you know, they might have had a really interesting life that doesn't always appear, but you could connect to them. And they made a movie on BBC as well about it. It's really nice to watch
it. It is about that understanding. To come back to, really, it is the subject of burnout. How do we look after our own well-being? I know the first thing is to recognise that you are feeling stretched, but something I hear so often, especially from women, is the only place I can be on my own is the toilet. That's the only space I've got for myself, and that's quite hard. That's a lot of pressure. And again, I know it is probably because there's almost a self-imposed feeling, I have to take care of this, I have to make sure it's all okay.
Yes, I think the problem is that we as women are supposed to like take care of everybody, one thing, and we're supposed to know how to do it, which is just natural. It's just assumed that we know, and we will cope with it, and we're gonna be fine. We're gonna succeed in it. That's the first thing to put away from your from the experience. It's okay. I think the first release that I got for myself and for my clients who are going through different similar experience was to saying, this is okay, I'm a sandwich carer and I'm not coping well. I'm not coping, and it's okay. Like, I have a right not to cope. And then from this space, you are much more likely to ask for help or to say, you know, this is what it is, and or, you know, because sometimes the help is also a matter of finances. It's very tricky. And it's also a matter of how much supportive the workplace and the government is. How much this issue is recognized, because you recognizing it on yourself is not
the same as everybody else seeing that it's a problem, and it's
but now that we have this research that shows how much more likely we are to experience depression and anxiety and physical symptoms as well, it gives us sort of like a more ground to speak up for ourselves and to take more care. And obviously, you know, like there's this expression, when should you do the meditation? It is when you think you have no time at all to do the meditation.
It's when you need it. It's true.
So it's the same thing for care. When you think there is no absolutely 1 minute that I can take care of myself, then this is the right time, really. And it doesn't have to be some... Ideally, it would be a retreat in Bali or, you know, a place like that. Why not? Some of us cannot afford it either financially or in terms of time. Some maybe small steps, and really trying to be present with yourself, because what happens, one of the symptoms of burnout is that you completely stop seeing yourself outside of this caring position. You stop seeing yourself as a woman or as a man or as a worker or as a professional or as an athlete, whatever that is. So really trying to get back sort of to this identities that you created, it might as well help.
Oh, that's really beautiful. This is a bit of a devil's advocate question. What if you, and this is about resentment, what if you're starting to feel your partner's not helping enough, but the argument that they will have is it's your parents and you're choosing to care for them and you could have a carer and we have the money, you've got all of that, but it's a lack of understanding of your own feeling of obligation or whatever it is that's driving you to do it. What then?
It's a very good question, and very often that's the question in the family, in the couples. It could become a really big issue, and I'm always curious in these cases, where does the sense of entitlement comes from? Why do you I'm just curious, what's the history behind this? Why do you think that your partner is obliged to help you 24/7? Where does it go? Is it because he or she is your partner? Is it because you helped and you felt back then not seen, not appreciated? Is it because I've always taken care of you and now it's your time and you never fail, and you always fail to help me, to see my needs? What is the history? Because it doesn't just come up from nowhere. So there's So there's got to be some kind of dynamic that I want to see, or is it does this person who is expecting his partner to be caregiver as well, he or she, is it the long piled up resentment that is showing up right now?
And sort of just on that, just picking up on what you were saying, what if you've almost got the opposite? So you've got the partner who is going, but I want to help and I'm trying to help, but you're not letting me help, because that can happen as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, especially for women. No, you cannot do it the proper way. No. Oh, just leave it to me. This could be the case, or you cannot imagine how many couples I have who are dying to get help from their partner, who are asking and begging, and when the partner is giving it, they cannot take it. They cannot, and again, there could be so many reasons behind it, so many inner struggles that they're not aware of. And then my job, obviously, is to show it to them. Look, this is what happened. He gave you the support that you were really asking for, and you said, I'm fine. For example. So what is happening here? You can hear all kinds of answers towards that, really honest, raw answers that you wouldn't normally get in a family setting. So it has to be supervised. Not because I hate you, but I'm trying to create this hopefully safe space for people to speak up.
To express, and get to the truth of, again, what's underneath the surface.
There's so much to
it. The problem that anyone presents with is never the actual problem.
Oh, no.
That's the one they're able to speak about, isn't it? Oh, my goodness. Madina, we're keeping you. We'll be back just after this.
How to hear your body, how to understand your body. Funny enough, your body speaks before your mind says anything or notices anything. So how about right now you focus on your body? You can close your eyes or you can keep them open and just notice if your jaw is clenched. Because if your jaw is clenched, you might be holding on to stress or tension. Now notice your chest. If you feel tightness in your chest, it might be that you're holding on to anger. How about your stomach? Is your stomach clenched? Sometimes we hold lots of sadness in our bodies, lots of frustration, lots of uncomfortable feelings that we've been suppressing for a long, long time. So how about you give yourself time to listen to your body right now? And then make sure to listen the message that your body is trying to give you.
Hey there, I'm Diane Forster, host of I Have Today, where we talk about the art of intentional living. Our show is on the Fresh Takes channel on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific. So if you're ready to be inspired, empowered, and educated and learn how to live the I Have Today way, then tune in. Hope to see you there.
welcome back to Mental Health Matters Office Hours, where we have Madina, and we're talking about the sandwich generation and well-being. So if someone is a carer for children and parents, is it wise to all go on holiday together?
Do things together, because you're desperate to bring everyone together.
Yes.
The answer is yes, if you have good communication skills and if you have a good history of previous holidays which worked out well for you, at least, just with your friends,
so
and
important.
with your kids.
Yes.
Just
Previous
expecting.
history.
Well, yes, because if before you were a carer, it didn't really work.
It's not going to work now, is it?
Yeah, because very often we come from the place of fantasy, of a place what we see on Instagram, that people do it, and we can do it as well, right? It's going to be fun. Yeah, they all going to love it. And if the setting is proper, if there is a good connection between the generations, and there's a good, established history.
Yes,
that's the word.
of 1 or 2 days, either like separately or together, like 1 or 2 days getaways, then you might try, and there's always should be an exit door, a permission, to say like, guys, this is not working, we're not going to push it.
Yeah.
Because I can share as well, like when I went to my parents' house and I thought, what a great idea, finally my kids are going to spend time with my parents. And we didn't even go for vacation. We actually went to their house. Yeah. What I was not prepared for is that I came up from the place of my fantasies. Oh, how it's going to be. They're going to drink tea together in the garden and discuss and play the football and everything. Wasn't the case.
Not unusual. I have a friend who said something very, very similar. It was over a sister and the son who came back over because they'd migrated, but they actually came back to the UK and had all of this. They'll all get, oh no, the child stayed in his room the whole time and played computer games, didn't want to talk to the grandparents. The grandparents were a bit like, well, where's the child? It all got a bit
and you're
aggressive.
The guilty one.
Yes.
Yeah, you're in the middle. Again, you're supposed to regulate their communication. In case like with my parents, they don't speak the English, and my kids don't speak Russian. So I had to always, but last time when they came here, they used Alexa. So that was a good way to just keep them all together. But it takes time. And
because it can seem like a really good way to kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Oh, no.
On holiday.
I've also
because
Yes, I love that.
I've also been, that doesn't always work.
It's so true.
I know. Oh, it's just brought back.
I know.
All sorts of things. So why do you think society doesn't really recognise this issue? I mean, as we said, and you said it's a new term.
Yeah, it's a
I'd
new
not
term
heard of
because
it
it's a new thing.
Yeah.
Like I said before, the women were giving birth much earlier, or, slightly earlier. Yeah. So that gave a chance for children to grow up after by the time the parents were aging. So it wasn't the double shift.
Yes.
At the same time. But also, I think because women are mostly affected by it, it wasn't researched much.
Oh, wow.
We're back to that.
Who would care about women's problems? I mean, they just deal with it.
all over again.
Exactly. And this is what I was going to mention as well. So we discussed the problems that the sandwich carers go. Plus put the menopause on the top of that, because the average age of a sandwich carer is 39.
Oh,
so that goes from 33 to 49. Hello, menopause.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. And you just reminded me of a friend of mine, actually. She's 51. She has a 3-year-old, and she has an elderly parent, and they've all moved in together so that she can do the joint caring. And not only that, she's moved away from her home 3 hours away.
Oh.
So, yeah.
No support network.
No support network. I mean, she's amazing. I don't know how she's doing it. So it's a really tricky situation.
It is.
So with that, I mean, we as women seem to have so many feelings of... I've written guilt. I think it's shame. I think it's shame we feel, because guilt is much more about how can I make it right for everybody else? But it's that feeling of I'm inadequate.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I'm not...
Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah. Why can't I cope? And then, I can't ask for help because everyone's going to judge me. And so how do you manage those feelings of shame and reach out and say, I'm not coping here?
Good question. I think it depends on the size of your shame.
Yeah, true.
Sometimes it's enough to talk to one person and
Yes.
share how you feel inadequate and shame. Hopefully this person will understand and says, it's all right. Or one therapist or friend or, somebody who actually cares. Sometimes the shame is so big and so deep that I suggest like group access, like group therapy, because that helps like this deep down feelings to have to find their space to go out, because one person may not take all your shame and they're like, oh, this is too much for me. You should love your, very, and which is normal reaction. They would say, no, you should love your parents and this is your duty, whatever that is, if they feel.
If they feel that's it.
Yeah, this is overwhelming. So maybe like a group setting, again, it doesn't have to be a psychotherapy group, but some getaway somewhere by the campfire or somewhere, like, guys, I want to share something, it's big, it's been really bothering me and I want just your opinion. Please don't, just try not to judge, try to understand, because I need support here.
Well, that's beautiful to again preface it. It's big. It's big because whatever anyone thinks about whatever you say, it's big to you.
Yes.
And I think that is fair, perfectly fair to preface that. So, what do we need to look for when it comes to our own mental well-being? I mean, how do we know we're burning out? Because again, this is that book, The Body Says No, Gabor Mate. You hear stories of women who have been looking after their own parents, their children, their husbands, then they get sick, they go to hospital, on the same day they come back, they're back to looking after, they're doing all of that. How do we know when to stop before our body actually goes, not happening, and has a heart attack?
No, hopefully not, but I'm afraid for some women it's not accessible yet, because it's about being connected to your body.
Yeah.
And from early age on, if we are trained that, no, you're not tired, no, it's all right, no, you're not sick, no, you're not that, no, you're not hungry, come on, you just ate. Yeah. So over time we get, unfortunately, really, really disconnected with our wants, with our needs, and with our bodies. I had a friend of mine, she went through difficult times, but she told me, I would never know that I'm tired unless I would just collapse on the couch, like with that, and I would have such a terrible headache that I wouldn't be able to do anything else. Before that, there is no gradation, there is no stages. There's just do this. And she was one of the eldest sisters looking after small children. So she was always in this mode. So what I would suggest, if you're experiencing any symptoms, if you hear this, if you're a sandwich carer, you might want to think what's going on with you, but also establish this connection with you. What do I actually feel? Inadequacy, shame, guilt, remorse, resentment, and so on and so forth. Because when we disidentify from this, we keep on doing. It's also important sometimes just to say to our feelings, okay, you're there, I'm going to get back to you, but I need to get my things done.
Of course.
But you don't suppress, you just sort of delay the moment when you need to face these things. And sometimes facing it is hard.
Yeah.
It takes somebody trained and specialized to help you face how much actually anger you have towards your parents or your kids or your culture or whatever that is.
And in that safe space where you feel you can express it, because I can understand how people may not want to talk about it with their friends, especially if it's a cultural thing, because you don't know what their opinion's going to be on that, and that becomes really difficult. So this is a bit of a curveball question. Is it ever right to bring children into helping care? We've mentioned young carers, and that can be really quite difficult because, again, just from everything you've been saying, that can then put a young child, before they're ready to make those decisions for themselves, into, you're a good girl because you help look after, and it sets down some very strange expectations.
I think you answered this about the expectations. Because before I studied the family system, systemic family therapy, I always thought that it is so wrong that elder children would look after younger children, and this is such a traumatizing experience. They should never do this. However, some families cannot afford a babysitter. You know, we should take this into consideration as well. Some families cannot afford a caregiver. You know, this is the only option that they have is this child, really. And, you know, hopefully this child is 16 plus and, you know, aware of what's happening, but it's not always the case. However, what you can do, with the best thing you can do in this situation is to explain the child what are the responsibilities and try to make it according to the age. Like if, for example, in case with siblings, right? Very often the problem is not of elder sibling taking care of younger sibling. The problem is that they're made responsible how they feel. They're supposed to calm them down, to soothe them, to resolve their issues, you know, on the top of taking care of them physically and changing their nappies or whatever it is. And that is what the child cannot do. And we should be very, very clear about that to the children. Your job is not to calm down the grandma, you know, not to resolve her episode. You can always ask for help. This is not for your age. I'm there, but I really need your help, and I would appreciate it. What you do is important, you know, like really recognizing the input that the child is doing. And if possible, paying for it as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's
definitely
true. Oh my goodness, this is so fascinating. We're keeping you for your top tips, Madina, and we'll head over to Business Boost. Slightly unusual Business Boost today. A lot of us in the UK have been watching this series called The White Lotus. And in the most recent series, which is season 3, there's this, they call it the toxic trio, or the blonde blob, as Mike White, the creator, calls them. It's 3 girls who've gone on holiday and they're all trying to reconnect. They're lifelong friends. And as you watch the series, their conversations get more and more snipey. 2 of them join and then gossip about the other one behind them. That one's back. And then the other 2 join and gossip about the other one. And then when they see each other, it's always so lovely and I love you and you're so amazing. And one of the key things that many people have recognized in discussing this toxic trio is if all of them weren't so consumed with trying to put on a show of what their life is like. So one of them, she's in an unhappy marriage. Her job is causing her all kinds of issues. The other one's worried about losing her looks. She's got a much younger boyfriend and she's worried about him leaving her. And then the other one has got this status husband, but feels like she's nothing apart from this status husband. And if all 3 of them had just been honest at the very beginning and said, do you know what? And this is something our guest has said, do you know what? I've got something to discuss and it's big and I don't want you to judge me, but please can you understand me? All 3 of them would have had a very, very different and probably a lot healthier holiday. So what I want you to do this week in Business Boost is be authentic, especially with the people who know you. You may have to preface it. You may have to say, I'm going to share something and it's big and I don't want you to judge me. But try it. Try and be honest with yourself and try and be honest with those close to you.
Navigating today's workplace is tough.
Toxic employees, endless drama, a lack of motivation. We've all been there.
But fear not, we are here to help. My name is Leanne and I'm a chartered psychologist.
My name is Al and I'm a business owner. And together we dig into the scientific and commercial secrets behind great workplace cultures in truth, lies and work.
A no-nonsense, award-winning psychology podcast brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. We explore practical strategies for building a great workplace.
We debunk buzzwords and bring you the very best advice around finding and keeping great people. From personality tests.
Personality tests they're mostly bollocks. I don't know what kind of language you do on your podcast. I don't know if people know this. But the man who wrote the Wonder Woman comics is the person who invented the disc.
When more flexible working became a norm, you no longer hurt your career prospects by being the one person who worked flexibly.
All the way to avoiding high turnover.
We recruit and promote people to managerial roles based on their technical skills, not their people skills. This is a very fundamental problem we have, which we haven't directly tackled.
From toxic-free cultures,
interventions for the individual are only half the answer. Systemic change is the other half.
to sustainable growth.
Thinking beyond just paying somebody a good salary, I think is super necessary now. We have to offer so much more than that.
We have got you covered.
So join us on Tuesdays and Thursdays where we help you to simplify the science of work and build amazing workplace cultures.
Hello, join me, Stacey Bullock, host of Tools for Everyday Living on E360's Positive Vibrations channel every Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on E360 TV.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We've reached the final part of the show. It's again been such an eye-opening show and a discussion we really have to have. So thank you. Thank you, Madina. And to hear your own experience as well, really, it makes it very, very real.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you say about what you've been through and how you sharing it with the group might be easier than sharing it with the individual, and all of that makes so much sense because we always talk about reaching out and you know, connecting with one person, and I'm sure they will be understanding, but we don't often think about, well, maybe do it in a group. We often think it just goes to that person.
And maybe not necessarily even talking. It could be some kind of movement.
Or drumming is another one that we talked about. You can drum your feelings out and just get it out there. And
sometimes it's so much that it's hard to verbalize it, but through your body you can express it through a dance or through some kind of movement.
And I think what's important there is that allows you to express it. It won't necessarily allow you to process it, but at least it gets it out, which means it's easier to then start processing. But what have you taken? There's so much in today's discussion.
There's so much. I feel like we just touched on the surface.
Agreed.
But going back to the group situation, that's really interesting because, you could speak to a friend or a therapist, but then you're only getting one point of view back. Whereas if you're in a group, even if you don't really want to talk, you just get so many different opinions of everybody in the group that actually one of them might resonate more than if you just chosen to speak to one friend. And the other thing that's really come out for me is just try and learn to recognise how you're feeling. You know, don't get to the place where you're burnt out and having to go to A&E, you know, because maybe you're so stressed or whatever. It's really hard to recognise that before it becomes like a crisis where you have burnt out. It's really hard to recognise. Maybe just, ask yourself every day, how am I feeling?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And for me, it's that point about young carers and the difference between quite a physical responsibility, just don't let them touch the stove, versus make sure they're calm, look after them, solve all their problems, which I think we can place upon other people without even realising it. And in a way, I guess I see that with the question I asked earlier about your partner not helping or whatever. Are you actually asking your partner to solve the problems, or just do you want some help moving their bed? It's a big difference as to what you're asking for. And I hadn't thought of that before.
No. Yeah, that's a good point. Are you asking to be saved or to be helped?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That.
And the difference is, because this is one of my favorite subjects as well, about the difference between saving and helping. When the person wants to be saved, they put away all the responsibility on you. Whereas when they want help, they say, this is what I can do. Can you do this, please? I'm participating in this.
And it's such a blurred line, especially when you're in the situation.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other show in itself. Oh, my goodness. Well, unfortunately, we don't have time for that, but we do have time for Madina. If you can give us your top tips for looking after yourself in a very challenging time.
So the thing that we recommend first, like I said earlier, is to continue developing your other identities. Go back to the places or the people that you met, or the things that you were doing before you became a sandwich carer. Sometimes it might help. Sometimes, you can feel energized in these places. Sometimes you can find out that it's actually no longer about you. Something has shifted in you. And it's very interesting to find, like, even slightest points of interest or curiosity. They could be very, very faded, but it's important to follow them, because otherwise, like I said, you're losing this connection with yourself, which you don't want to do. Another thing, which is very important, is to ask for community help. We live in different communities, and some of them are supportive and some are toxic, unfortunately. But if you find yourself in a toxic community, it is hard. It's hard to recognize the problem. It's hard to ask for help. But there are other organizations that I mentioned, Carers UK, Age UK, the hotlines that you can ask for the guidance. If you self-refer yourself, you might need to wait for a long time. And it's not necessarily, it's just starting to be an issue which is recognized. If you call the NHS, your GP, and say, I'm a sandwich carer, I need help, I don't think, the GP would see it as urgent. But also, it's all about connection and all about not staying alone in the situation. And sometimes our partner might help. Sometimes they're not in the same place, but they're, looking for other ways and other people, because it's a lot. Being sandwiched in this situation is a lot. And you can only harm yourself by trying to do it all by yourself.
Oh my goodness, Madina, that's it's quite a lot to actually hold in one show, and thank you so much for taking us through that so eloquently, so beautifully, and in a way that just, I think it's really resonated with me,
yes,
with yourself as well,
yes,
and I hope with you out there too. We will definitely love to have you back on the show. This is such a great discussion. From all of us at Mental Health Matters, have a healthy week.